Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, the suspect in the fatal shooting of conservative thought leader Charlie Kirk is facing 7 charges, including aggravated murder. That means he could be facing the death penalty if convicted. Jack Bradley standing by in Provo, Utah to tell us more on the charges and the latest details in the case. The FBI is investigating social media posts that appear to predict Charlie Kirk's assassination. And on Capitol Hill today, FBI Director Kash Patel answered questions about the Bureau's investigation following the assassination. Luis Eduardo Martinez has the key takeaways from the Senate hearing. President Trump filing a multi-billion-dollar defamation lawsuit against the New York Times, alleging the newspaper engaged in a decades-long campaign to harm his reputation. Mario Tzu at the White House. That's as the president arrives in Britain for an unprecedented second state visit. The two nations are expected to agree on trade deals worth more than $10 billion. Police, meanwhile, prepare extensive security measures. Malcolm Hudson reports from London. A New York judge tosses 2 terror-related murder charges against accused killer Luigi Mangione and schedules a new hearing. Arlene Richards brings us the latest in that case.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. Officials in Utah are seeking the death penalty against Charlie Kirk's suspected assassin. That's as new details emerge in the case, with prosecutors saying more DNA at the crime scene links to the suspect, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson. We go now live to NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley at the courthouse in Provo, Utah. Good evening, Jack. What are the charges?
Good evening, Tiffany. Well, Robinson is facing 7 charges as of now. He's charged, I'm going to read these off to you, with aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury, 2 counts of obstruction of justice, 2 counts of witness tampering, and committing the crime in front of children, some younger than 14 years old. The county attorney here in Utah County is now seeking the death penalty. Take a look.
The defendant is believed to have targeted Charlie Kirk based on Charlie Kirk's political expression and did so knowing that children were present and would witness the homicide. I am filing a notice of intent to seek the death penalty. I do not take this decision lightly, and it is a decision I have made independently.
Now, aggravated murder is the only charge which could lead to the death penalty in the state of Utah, which allows for capital offense. It's being charged as aggravated murder because the assassination was done in front of thousands of people, putting others in harm's way, possibility of death. Additionally, the county prosecutor also said that DNA evidence was found on the rifle, around the rifle, on the towel, linking back to Robinson, and that rifle was in fact given to him by his grandpa. Take a look.
DNA consistent with Robinson was found on the rifle's trigger. After shooting Mr. Kirk, Robinson hid the gun, discarded the clothing he wore when he fired the rifle, and told his roommate to delete incriminating text messages and not talk to police. Children were present at the time of the shooting.
Additionally, there are allegations of text messages between Robinson and his transgender roommate boyfriend that have come out, allegedly having him confessed to his roommate that he did in fact kill Kirk. And there was also a note left at his house which allegedly said that he has the chance to kill Kirk and that he would, left for his roommate. Later on, in text, Robinson allegedly told his roommate to delete all of those texts that they had sent to each other that could be incriminating, and also not to talk to police. Take a look.
To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you. Roommate, you weren't the one who did it, right? Robinson, I am. I'm sorry. Roommate, why? Robinson, why did I do it? Roommate, yeah. Robinson, I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I am able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence.
Prosecutors also said that Robinson allegedly implied to his parents that he did kill Kirk and that later on he wanted to kill himself, but after talking with his parents and a family friend, decided to turn himself in. Tiffany.
And Jack, what are the next steps in this case?
Well, the next hearing will be set for September 29th, and he just appeared in court today virtually, which is not uncommon for this kind of case. Robinson does not yet have a lawyer, and he will be one assigned to him before that next hearing on the 29th by the county. He will remain at Utah County Jail until his case concludes. Tiffany.
All right, Jack, thanks for those updates. FBI Director Kash Patel testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee today for the first time since his confirmation. The hearing was dominated by questions about the Bureau's investigation into the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Our Washington correspondent, Luis Eduardo Martinez, has the details.
We meet today in the aftermath of the political assassination of Charlie Kirk, a school shooting, and the senseless murder of Ukrainian refugees.
Today's hearing was already scheduled before the political assassination of Charlie Kirk. For Senate Republicans, the hearing centered around crimes and political violence, while for Senate Democrats, it centered around personal attacks against Director Patel and accusations against his administration of the FBI.
Mr. Patel was so anxious to take credit for finding Mr. Kirk's assassin that he violated one of the basics of effective law enforcement. At critical stages of an investigation, shut up and let the professionals do their job.
Have you been asked or directed by the White House or others to engage in a crackdown on political groups?
No. I've been asked by my chain of command to properly root out criminal activity wherever it is in whatever investigation we are conducting, and that's what we're doing. Nobody gives me a list on who to target. My targeting list is from the men and women at the FBI.
Director Patel showcased how during his 7-month tenure of the FBI, his administration has sought to demonstrate extraordinary transparency to regain public trust, in particular with Congress.
In the 7 months that I've been FBI director, we have produced 33,000 pages to the United States Congress, 33,000 pages. Just to put that in perspective, my predecessor in his 7-year term issued 13,000 pages to Congress.
Democratic senators insisted on accusing FBI Director Kash Patel of partisanship and even in instances spoke over the director of the FBI during his floor time.
Did you ever terminate or discipline an FBI employee in whole or in part because they had been assigned or worked on an investigation of Donald Trump or January 6th?
FBI
yes or no?
employees are only terminated
yes
if
or no,
they fail
Mr.
to
Patel?
uphold their oaths of
yes
office
or no?
and duty.
You're not answering my question.
I don't have to answer your question yes or no because you're setting up a trap so you can have a media narrative.
I'm not setting up a trap,
and I'm not giving it to you.
Unless it's true that you fired people.
People have been terminated at the FBI who failed to uphold the standards that the FBI requires them to uphold.
The hearing lasted 4 hours with no breaks for FBI Director Kash Patel. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
President Trump departs for Britain for an unprecedented second state visit. He said it is a great honor to be hosted by his friend, the King, for a day of British pageantry. The two nations are expected to agree on trade deals worth more than $10 billion. NTD's international correspondent, Malcolm Hudson, has more.
President Trump lands in Britain for a second state visit, an honor never given to any other U.S. president. Before leaving, he said,
Well, my relationship is very good with the UK, and Charles, as you know, who's now king, is my friend. And it's the first time this has ever happened where somebody was honored twice, so it's a great honor. But basically, I'm there also on trade. They want to see if they can refine the trade deal a little bit. We made a deal, and it's a great deal. And I'm into helping them. Our country is doing very well.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer wants to pitch Britain as a destination for US investment, closely aligning its financial services, tech and energy sectors with larger US peers to try to drive much-needed economic growth in the UK. The two are expected to seal deals worth more than $10 billion. An analyst said the British government plans to steer clear of contentious topics.
The UK will likely play on the things that the government knows Trump enjoys and likes about the UK, FaceTime with the royal family, emphasis on the historical links between the two countries. But what we should be looking out for is whether the UK secures some of the announcements, some of the deals, particularly on technology, and something was trailed this morning on energy as well, out of this visit.
Trump and his First Lady Melania will be greeted by King Charles on Wednesday for a day of pomp and ceremony at Windsor Castle, including a carriage tour, a state banquet, a flypast by military aircraft, and a gun salute. Both nations will have sizable delegations. Streets in the royal town have been decked out in US and UK flags flying side by side, although the bulk of the trip will be held out of public view.
Well, I think we have a very good relationship with America, and it's a shame really they're not having a carriage ride through Windsor, because everybody loved Mr. Macron in the carriage, you know. So the security is very, very tight.
I don't think it's appropriate. Why does he get any better treatment or different treatment than any other leader? Apart from our leader wants to try to get something from him, which he's not getting.
I'm from Canada, so at the moment we feel a little bit misunderstood by him, so I'm not sure that we're excited about Donald Trump in a lot of ways, but it's a free world, or at least it should be, so go wherever he wants.
British police have implemented extensive security measures, patrolling the waters around Windsor Castle, saying they had planned for just about every foreseeable eventuality. The high-profile trip comes after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, prompting additional security concerns.
So a review of the routes being taken, the premises, the residents they're staying at, looking at any buildings that overlook those areas, line of sight, etc. So any possible threat to the principals, the president, his wife, the king, the queen, the prince, princess of Wales, everybody.
Trump will return to the United States on Thursday evening. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News.
And President Trump filing a multi-billion-dollar defamation lawsuit against a major media outlet. Joining us now live is NTD's Washington correspondent Mari Otsu. Good evening, Mari. What can you tell us about the president's latest legal action?
Good evening, Tiff. President Trump is filing a $15 billion lawsuit against the New York Times, 4 of its reporters, and Penguin Random House, accusing them of defamation during the height of the 2024 election. And in his announcement, President Trump mentions 2 previous lawsuits, one with ABC News and another against Paramount and CBS, both settled for what the president calls, quote, record amounts. And here's President Trump this morning on why these lawsuits matter. Take a look.
Well, ABC paid me $16 million recently for a form of hate speech, right? We want everything to be fair. It hasn't been fair.
President Trump says he is proud to hold the New York Times responsible, as he is doing with ABC and Paramount, who knew, quote, they were falsely smearing me through a highly sophisticated system of document and visual alteration. They practiced this long-term intent and pattern of abuse, which is both unacceptable and illegal. The president cites the New York Times' endorsement of Vice President and then presidential candidate Kamala Harris, saying that putting her on the front page is, quote, something unheard of. The piece he's referring to is called The Only Patriotic Choice for President and begins with the line, it is hard to imagine a candidate more unworthy to serve as President of the United States than Donald Trump. It goes on to call President Trump morally and temperamentally unfit for office and says he will do profound and lasting harm to our democracy. President Trump's legal team is also taking aim at 3 articles they claim are crafted with actual malice calculated to inflict maximum damage upon President Trump for purposes of election interference. One of them says President Trump meets the definition of a fascist, warning readers he would, quote, rule like a dictator. In the president's 2022 defamation suit against CNN, his legal team says that a search for instances in which the name Trump appears within 10 words of Hitler or Nazi in CNN broadcasts since November 2016 produces at least 645 results. The same suit alleges that CNN attempts to taint the president with labels of racist, Russian lackey, insurrectionist, and threat to democracy, and points to a broadcast calling him as destructive as Hitler, Stalin, and Mao.
They accuse me of being a Nazi. They accuse me of being a Hitler-type guy, and I'm not. I'm the opposite. They're the ones that are doing. They're oppressive. This is like an oppressive machine. And, you know, they also happen to have the press. for whatever reason. But think of what they're fighting for.
This legal action is coming as the Trump administration condemns all forms of political violence and radicalization in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination.
For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now.
As the Trump administration is saying that they are working to identify and dismantle the forces that led to Kirk's assassination, President Trump is arriving in England for his second state visit, where he's expected to be welcomed at Windsor Castle by the royal family tomorrow, and he's expected to meet with Prime Minister Keir Starmer on Thursday. Tiff, back to you.
All right, Mari, thanks for that. A New York judge today tossed 2 terror-related charges against murder suspect Luigi Mangione. The judge said the charges were legally insufficient. NTD's Arlene Richards has the details.
A New York judge ruled on Tuesday that charges of first-degree murder in furtherance of an act of terrorism and murder in the second degree as a crime of terrorism against Luigi Mangione are dismissed. Mangione was indicted last December by a Manhattan grand jury on 11 counts, including first-degree murder and second-degree murder, along with other weapon and forgery charges. He's charged with killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. State Court Judge Gregory Caro said in a written opinion that the prosecution relied heavily on claims that Mangione's ideological motive for the crime was terror-related. The prosecution said Mangione had a desire to draw attention to what he perceived as inequities within the American healthcare system. Caro said there was no indication in the murder statute that such ideology fits within the definition of terrorism. The judge left in place second-degree murder charges despite the defense's efforts to have the entire state case dismissed. Mangione also still faces federal charges and other state charges in Pennsylvania, all of which he has pleaded not guilty to. The judge set hearings for Mangione's New York case to begin on December 1st. A trial date has not yet been set. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
The Trump administration plans to go after organizations fostering violence, riots, and doxing, and Trump's strategy to lower crime in Memphis and other cities. Tune in for a panel discussion on NTD's Capitol Report with Steve Lance. Tonight, Mark Meckler and Josh Lafazan at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Coming up, Israeli forces strike Houthi targets in Yemen as Israel expands ground operations in the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Marco Rubio meets with Qatari officials after the Israeli strike on Hamas leaders in Doha. Jason Perry with the update. And President Trump may meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy in New York next week. Arian Posdar has what Trump says about the possible meeting when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Israeli forces strike targets in Yemen as they expand ground operations in the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Marco Rubio meets with officials in Qatar just days after Israel struck Hamas leaders in Doha. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
Israel released footage on Tuesday of Israeli fighter jets taking off from Israel to launch strikes in Yemen over 1,000 miles away. Israel reported striking the Houthi port, which Israel says is used by the Houthi terrorist group for receiving weapons from Iran, which will later be used to attack Israel and its allies. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said this after the strikes.
At the same time, our forces are operating in Gaza City. We are currently making efforts to open additional routes to enable a faster evacuation of the Gaza population, to separate it from the terrorists whom we want to attack.
Israeli troops have begun expanding ground operations in Gaza City, one of Hamas's final strongholds. Israel believes about 3,000 Hamas terrorists are still in Gaza City, and many residents still have not evacuated the combat zones. The Hamas terrorist group released a statement saying that Israel's military operations would endanger the lives of Israeli soldiers being held hostage by Hamas. A spokesperson for the Israel Defense Forces said Hamas had turned Gaza City into the, quote, largest human shield in history.
Beneath the streets runs a vast network of tunnels connecting command centers, rocket launchers, and weapon storage facilities, all deliberately hidden under civilians and civilian infrastructure.
President Trump also commented on the situation.
I hear Hamas is trying to use the old human shield deal. If they put the hostages in front of them, Hamas as protection, as what they call them bodyguards, Hamas is going to have hell to pay.
Meanwhile, Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke about the war in the Gaza Strip before he departed Israel on Tuesday.
Our preference, our number one choice, is that this ends through a negotiated settlement where Hamas says we're going to demilitarize, we're no longer going to pose a threat, we're going to disband, we're going to release every single hostage.
Rubio then flew to Qatar, where he met with Qatari officials, who Rubio says can play a key role in helping to reach an agreement to end the war in the Gaza Strip. His meeting also comes after Israel reported striking Hamas leaders who were living in Qatar's capital. The spokesman for Qatar's foreign ministry said the Israeli strikes in Doha heightened the need for renewed defense agreements between Qatar and the United States. Jason Perry, NTD News.
President Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy may meet in New York next week. The U.S. continues working on peace between Russia and Ukraine, while multiple Ukrainian cities report coming under fire today. NTD's international correspondent Arian Postar has the Ukraine update.
Well, he's going to have to get going and make a deal. He's going to have to make a deal. Zelensky's going to have to make a deal.
President Trump says he'll tell Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy that he has to make a deal with Russia. That's if the two meet in New York next week at the UN General Assembly. Secretary of State Marco Rubio hints at such a meeting.
No leader in the world has done more to try to end that war than President Trump had. Multiple calls, multiple meetings with Zelenskyy, including probably next week again in New York.
A month ago, Trump met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska. On Tuesday, Trump was asked if he thinks the summit with Putin accomplished what it was supposed to.
Yeah, it accomplished a lot, but it takes two to tango also.
But Zelenskyy on Tuesday said Putin is trying to find a way out of isolation through diplomacy with Trump. Zelenskyy referenced the Alaska summit as he was making that point.
He got photos with President Trump. He received a public dialogue, and I think this opens the doors for Putin into some other summits.
Shortly after the Alaska summit, Trump invited Zelenskyy and various other European leaders to the White House, talking to both sides of the conflict. Meanwhile, in Ukraine on Tuesday, multiple cities report coming under fire. Video appears to show a Russian drone hitting a university in Kharkiv, setting the roof ablaze and injuring 4 people. And in Ukraine's northeast, Russia says it struck a gas distribution station serving the Ukrainian military. And in southern Ukraine, 1 civilian is reported dead and at least 13 injured. Officials say Russian forces carried out 10 strikes from multiple rocket launch systems, damaging 10 apartment buildings and 12 private homes.
I heard some distant explosions very far away, so we went to sleep. And then there was a super strong explosion, which blew out our windows.
2 children are reportedly among the injured civilians of the attack. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Coming up, lawmakers honor the legacy of Charlie Kirk following his passing last week. Elected officials on both sides of the aisle are condemning political violence. You knew him, worked with him, and debated alongside him. Comedian and filmmaker Rob Schneider reflects on Charlie Kirk's life and what his tragic death says about the world we now live in. Hear his conversation with NTD after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Lawmakers continue honoring Charlie Kirk and what he stood for. Elected officials from both parties are also condemning political violence. NTD's David Lamb has more.
On Tuesday, lawmakers at a House GOP press conference honored the legacy of Charlie Kirk, co-founder of Turning Points USA.
Just wanted to point out, and I have every time I've spoken on this issue, that our friend Charlie, and he was a friend to so many of us, would not want us to be stuck in that grief. He would not want us to be overcome by despair. Instead, he would want everyone to go out and be happy warriors as he was, to honor his memory by doing what Charlie did, and that is encouraging the free exchange of ideas, the free marketplace of ideas, by preaching the truth, but doing that in a loving way, by loving others. And that's what Charlie was marked by. That's how he described himself, and that's what his actions prove, that he was a Christ follower.
Johnson said interest in Kirk's organization has vastly increased. Speakers honored Kirk's message as well as his faith. Kirk repeatedly went on tour to speak with large groups of students at universities, sharing his Christian values.
It just reminds us how powerful the idea of one person's idea can be, because that's what Charlie represented when he started Turning Point at 18 years old. It's an idea. And that idea became a movement. And anybody who thought they were going to snuff out that movement with an assassin's bullet, they were clearly underestimating the power of Charlie's idea and the inspiration that he has now given to millions and millions of people all across this country. And in that momentum, that inspiration is only going to grow.
Kirk, at the age of 31, was shot and killed while speaking to students at Utah Valley University on September 10th. The public and elected officials have condemned the violence, and the suspected shooter is currently facing murder charges.
Violence in all forms is unacceptable. Political violence is particularly dangerous. Not only does it seek to injure, maim, or kill, it seeks to intimidate and terrorize and silence. Political violence doesn't only affect those who are directly targeted or their loved ones. It affects all of us. It tears at the fabric of American society and the fundamental principles that this nation was founded upon. A nation where civil disagreements should be welcome, because we know that discourse can lead to progress.
A funeral for Kirk is being held in Glendale, Arizona on Sunday. David Lamb, NTD News.
And earlier, NTD's Don Ma spoke with Rob Schneider, comedian, filmmaker, and host of the See What Happens Next podcast about Charlie Kirk's legacy, his life, and the reactions across the U.S. and overseas. Watch.
So, Rob, first of all, I'm a huge fan. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Don.
How are you doing today?
Good. You know, it's an extremely difficult time in America, but I'm very buoyed by the love that is being poured out, and what is a real energizing in what Charlie Kirk stood for, which was debate, discourse, and truthfully, like how exceptional the United States is. I mean, free speech was the foundation of all of our freedoms, and that's the fact that we can and should challenge each other's certainties, so that we could, get the best idea. That's what we need to continue to have an exceptional society, is to hear all ideas. And sometimes you're going to get stuck in a bad idea if you're not being challenged. And what's happened at universities all over the country is that they've been force-fed an ideology which is anti-American and against discourse, debate, and free speech. So it's seeing this as a watershed moment and a potential time for a re-energizing of what makes this country so special, and at how it is and will continue to be the beacon of freedom all over the world. And the cornerstone of that is free speech.
Yeah, and Charlie said it best: when the conversations stop, that's when the violence begins. How would you say, what is his impact his work has had on America?
Well, I mean, when you would go and when you could see online now the talks that Charlie had with students, some of the things, some of the thinking that the students had not been challenged. And they were basically, they're not at university now. They're not teaching people how to think critically or to think for themselves. They're just cranking out advocates for an ideology that is illiberal in nature and intolerant in its outcome. So some of these presuppositions that Charlie challenged them, and it's great to see that the kids answering that challenge and wanting to be the thousands of people that were energized. I mean, now it's millions of young minds that are energized to be challenged, and that's what you have. You have to have that vibrancy, and that vibrancy comes from debate. And in speech and in freedom, you don't get smooth from smooth, everybody agreeing with each other. Right. You get it from friction, and that friction is people disagreeing. And that debate and disagreement is what constitutes a vibrant society and a vibrant culture. And that's why the United States is and will continue to be such a creative center of the world, because it is, and business center of the world, because it is that exact friction that that is the foundation for these incredible ideas of world, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Google, whether it's Elon Musk. It's the United States where these come from. They don't come from totalitarian countries. You won't see it come up in China because of the strict nature and control. So while that creates conflict, we need to make sure and do everything in our power to make it a nonviolent conflict. But let us continue to have that discourse and this debate so that the best ideas will continue to foster excellence and creativity.
Right, the freedom of speech in authoritarian countries like China, it's a privilege, but here in the United States, it is right. Can you talk to us about the nature of these debates that you had with him on university campuses?
Well, there is a real problem with indoctrination. In other words, these kids are being, I don't like to use any other, this term, force-fed, but they're not being told to think, they're being told what to think. And some of these things that seem pretty basic, that there's a biological sex and that they're divided into female and male, and that is something that is in our bones. I mean, the fact that we have to have this discussion says that there has been some real, mind-numbingly dumb things taught to our kids. So that's just one aspect of it. But also the, how our republic was founded against tyranny, and that the Second Amendment is to protect against government tyranny, and that how that is being manipulated. I mean, that is that we have the Second Amendment to protect our First Amendment, and that is an important delineation that we have to always remember and make. So there is a human body. I mean, Charlie respected the dignity of every human being with love, with Christ's love, and more than anyone I've ever known, to be a true reflection of Christ's light and love. And that is our calling as Christians. And so he would lovingly debate people and remind them that the sanctity of human life and the beauty of it all, and that it's, seeing him talk about when, not as a fetus, you don't have a fetus shower.
You have a baby shower.
You have a baby shower. And I felt that he did it with love. And I felt that there was love back from those millions, or those thousands of kids when I would go to university with him. And I believe that there will be many, many Charlie Kirks now, millions, from kids who are moved and touched, and that will stand up. But he is irreplaceable. It was this summer that I'd realized he was a true, authentic American genius. And it really, I remember he had the intellect and the love of country. And that's something that that's what's being the dogma of some of these universities, is that they don't really teach respect how unique and exceptional this country is, how in world history, in human history, that the United States, as the freedom that we are endowed with by our Creator, it was fought for with blood, and that this is exceptional, and that the idea that it's just going to continue without our help is not true. We have to continually have eternal vigilance to protect these rights that we have. And it is really something for me. While this has been an extremely sad time, it's also seeing the outpouring and the appreciation for these rights. I think you're going to see we have now a different America that we've woken to from this tragedy. And I know that Charlie would be very proud of the people stepping up to re-energize these great, incredible American traditions of liberty for all Americans.
Okay, just one last question, Rob. What role do you think the media should play, and what do you think Charlie would have wanted at this moment?
Well, I mean, the reason I'm here is because the Epoch Times and NTD is a true source of news that has not been infiltrated or captured by whether it's the pharmaceutical industries or an ideology that is currently has been dominating the culture and dominating the news and our governmental agencies. So what we're seeing is not a revolution, we're seeing a counter-revolution against this woke or basically redressed communism in the form of redressed as tolerance, as manners, but it's really totalitarianism. So it's important that we continue to support and appreciate the very few outlets like Epoch Times, like NTD, that is going to bring you news. That's going to bring you news that does not have an agenda, but it's what happened. And then how you decide to interpret that is not coming through the lens of something that has a different agenda other than to inform and educate.
Okay, well, Rob, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you,
It's such
Don.
a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
And in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, videos of people cheering on his death are inundating social media. How are everyday Americans reacting to the celebration of political violence? NTD's Sam Wong was out on the National Mall in D.C. to hear from the people.
Vice President J.D. Vance was citing this statistic from YouGov saying that 26% of young liberals today believe that political violence is somewhat justified, and whereas 7% of young conservatives say the same. What are your thoughts on that number?
It doesn't surprise me at all. We're from Seattle. It's very liberal out there. And we get a lot of that sort of rhetoric out there.
I can't believe in the country we're at today that if you speak your mind, they want to shut you up. It's funny that the left and the party of tolerance and et cetera just wants to shut conservative voices down, and it's insane to me.
There's strong forces that are indoctrinating the young people today, and I think the government through Donald Trump, they'll come to find out where the money's coming from and maybe shut some of those places down. You know, First Amendment gives people broad latitude to speak their mind and speak their truth, but I mean, not to do the things that they do.
What would you guys say to those who are right now celebrating Charlie's passing? What would you say to them?
What's their reason? What's the reason for doing that? I want somebody to explain that to me because I don't understand, and I think most of the country doesn't understand, or most of the world.
First reaction is like, yeah, I want to do something stupid and be violent, but that's not what Charlie would have been all about. That wasn't what he's about.
To the people that are celebrating it is sickening, and I don't really think they even understand the gravity of what they're doing. He was 2 kids' dads, and he was a husband, and you know, I'm sure he's got parents that are around.
We stand here at the Lincoln Memorial. He paid the ultimate price for his beliefs and what he did to shape our nation, and I think what's happened with Charlie Kirk, although he wasn't a political figure, he was very much a figure in the national eye, and that same type of spirit of retaking our freedom and our liberties, I think, is playing out around the country.
Coming up, former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger is weighing in on the battle for control of the U.S. House. He's urging voters to reject Proposition 50. Christina Corona has more on his remarks. Should there be tighter restrictions on weather modification and geoengineering? Jason Blair has the highlights from a House hearing today on Capitol Hill. And in the NFL, how Tom Brady's presence in the coach's booth last night caused quite a stir. Dave Martin reports when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. It's been more than a decade since Arnold Schwarzenegger left office. Now, the former California governor is urging Californians to vote no on Proposition 50 this November. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is taking aim at a new California ballot measure. Speaking to USC students on Monday, he urged voters to reject Proposition 50. Prop 50 would redraw California districts to add 5 Democratic House seats. The former governor called the plan, quote, insane, saying it would weaken democracy and strip power from voters. Schwarzenegger argued that Democrats are copying Donald Trump's playbook in Texas, where Republicans gain new districts, saying, quote, 2 wrongs don't make a right. The proposal, pushed by Governor Gavin Newsom, would sideline maps created by California's independent redistricting commission. New districts would be drawn by Democrats and could cut into Republican-held seats. That could increase Democrats to 48 of California's 52 congressional seats in 2026. Last month, Schwarzenegger showed opposition to the ballot proposal with a photo shared on social media of him wearing a Terminate Gerrymandering t-shirt. Reflecting on Charlie Kirk's death, Schwarzenegger warned about the fragile state of democracy.
That someone's life was taken because they have a different opinion. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Schwarzenegger highlighted Charlie Kirk's talent for engaging with everyone around him.
This was a great communicator, a great advocate for the right, for Republican causes. And he had such a great way of communicating with the students that agreed or disagreed with him. And I just thought, it's a human being. A human life is gone.
Christina Corona, NTD News.
House GOP members push for more restrictions on weather modification and geoengineering, citing unknown and possibly disastrous consequences. Meanwhile, Democrats question the planned cuts to the EPA, which oversees environmental regulations. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has more.
For years, anybody who questioned weather modification was labeled crazy or a conspiracy theorist. Now we've learned that they've been doing it for decades. And not only is it a multi-billion-dollar industry, the government has invested a lot of Americans' hard-earned tax dollars into it.
Weather modification and cloud seeding, as was mentioned, it's a real thing. It exists. It has been practiced in varying forms since the 1940s.
Republicans on the House DOGE subcommittee are calling for more regulation with weather modification technology, as well as large-scale attempts to intervene in the Earth's climate, also known as geoengineering. And Democrats are wondering why there are proposed cuts to the EPA, whose job it is to research in these areas.
Today's advocates of geoengineering don't just want to address droughts or improve conditions for agriculture. They want to control the Earth's climate, to address the fake climate change hoax and head off global warming. That, of course, requires massive interventions.
But it's hard to understand why we're discussing banning these practices outright in this committee when the Oversight Committee in another subcommittee, literally as we're sitting here right now, is having a hearing about dismantling the Environmental Protection Agency.
One witness defends geoengineering, specifically the method of using sulfur dioxide to block sunlight.
The approaches that are used in doing it are all based on what's happened naturally. So volcanic eruptions put sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere, it turns to sulfate. It reflects maybe 1% of solar radiation.
Venture capitalists are already trying to get rich backing companies like Make Sunsets, which inject aerosols into the atmosphere to reflect sunlight back into space.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
Robert Redford has died at the age of 89. Redford's publicist said the actor passed away at his home in Sundance, Utah, surrounded by loved ones. In one of his most iconic roles, Redford starred with Paul Newman in 1969's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Redford was also one of the big names of the 1970s, starring in movies including The Candidate, All the President's Men, and The Way We Were. He would win an Oscar for Best Director for Ordinary People, which also won Best Picture in 1980. Redford's career would persist for decades. In 2013, the actor received critical acclaim for his solo performance as a sailor in All Is Lost. In 2018, Redford earned praise for his role in The Old Man and the Gun. Last night's NFL game was seemingly overshadowed by former player turned broadcaster Tom Brady and his controversial presence in the coach's booth of the team he owns. Today, the league officially weighed in. NTD's Dave Martin has more.
The NFL announced today that Tom Brady, who's both a broadcaster for Fox's NFL games and a part owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, is allowed to sit in his team's coach's booth, but is still prohibited from going to another team's facility for practices or TV production meetings as part of his broadcaster duties. The clarification came after Brady was seen on TV Monday night wearing a headset while sitting in the Raiders' coaching booth during their 20-9 loss to the Chargers. The site raised concerns about a possible conflict of interest. Could Brady's job as a broadcaster give him unique insights that he could pass on to his own team? Brady debuted as a broadcaster last year, but immediately had limitations put on him as soon as his ownership stake in the Raiders became official last October. The NFL, though, relaxed some of those restrictions this season, allowing him to take part in production meetings with players and coaches, albeit remotely. The potential conflict of interest issue was further flamed when Raiders offensive coordinator Chip Kelly told ESPN he talks to Brady 2 or 3 times per week, going through film and the weekly game plan. Raiders head coach Pete Carroll, though, called the report not accurate. Brady is next scheduled to call Sunday's Bears versus Cowboys contest. Meanwhile, his own Raiders face the Bears the following week. Elsewhere in the league, Los Angeles Rams head coach Sean McVay says he tore his plantar fascia during the team's win over Tennessee on Sunday. The 39-year-old McVay formerly played wide receiver at Miami of Ohio and is often seen sprinting around the sidelines on game days, whether to celebrate a score or talk with an official. McVay, though, didn't say whether he'll use a walking boot while his foot heals. This is Dave Martin for NTD News.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.